Hey everyone, this is Paya Vu. I am the founder of Your Own Pathway and this podcast called Owning It. So I'm so excited to bring this episode to you. And I'm even more excited that this is my first episode. So yay! I'm so excited and I'm so grateful for my first guest here, who is Stephanie Olano, of course, by she and her, and is a mental health entrepreneur and is the founder of TODOS Therapy and AWKMoney, you are a financial trauma coach, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Stephanie. So before we begin, I just wanted to say that Stephanie and I actually have a connection because I was on Stephanie's podcast, I think like a year and a half ago, called Struggle Food for the Soul.
It has been that long. That's crazy.
Yeah, it has been that long. And you were the first person for me to go on podcast. And now you are repaying it back for me by being on my podcast here. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here and sharing your story. So Stephanie, like, what's been going on since a year and a half ago when I first spoke with you?
Well, I got a bigger bookshelf. I love my books.
Yeah.
I love my books. I love my stuff. There's that. I moved into a different home, which allowed me to have a different home office.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, I started my private practice during the pandemic, and a lot of us were doing virtual. And even though things have opened up, people are more comfortable seeing folks in person, I kind of stayed in the virtual space. So, but I needed a home and a room that allowed like me to have like different stations in my home office. So that's definitely different.
Yeah.
The big thing is AWKMoney. I started my coaching business. I didn't give up my private practice, but I noticed with a lot of my clients, money situations were coming up. And I kind of went on this journey of figuring out like how to talk to my clients in a gentle way and in a non-judgmental way of, okay, how do we make a budget? But also, how do we deal with the anxiety and trauma that you're facing? So a lot of my mental health background came in handy for those conversations, but I just wasn't educated on like financial literacy or how other folks talk about money. So yeah.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, where do you live currently?
Yeah, so I'm in the Bay Area. I'm outside, like 30 minutes outside of San Francisco and San Jose. Like I'm kind of like right in the middle. But I can work with folks in my private practice anywhere in California because again, I'm virtual. But I try and announce like I'm from the Bay Area. Like I'm very chill, very, go off the vibes type of thing. But also very blunt and honest that a lot of native San Franciscans are kind of known for.
For being blunt?
Yeah, there's a thing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I've heard the metaphor, folks from certain parts of California, they're kind. No, they're nice but not kind, but those outside like the East Coast, they're kind but not nice. I like to think I'm a little bit of both. I try to be kind, I try to be nice, but if I got to kick you in the ass, I do. I just do.
So if there are any native Californians or from the Bay Area who are watching this, please confirm or I say your piece about what Stephanie just said. So yeah, okay. You're native of that area, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Loud and proud.
It's so interesting. So for those who don't know, I'm a mental health therapist too, and I practice in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And I think COVID just opened so many things for us, opened our eyes, and really forced us to slow down.
Yeah.
And think about things that maybe we were not ready to think about. And what did it do for you? Like, what did you have to think about?
Harness the fear that private practice was for me. I thought for the longest time, because again, like in grad school, you're taught this is the nonprofit setting, this is the hospital setting. Like that's kind of what we're trained to do, or at least to work in those settings a little bit more. So the thought of private practice, it was always explained like, well, you're going to be lonely. You're going to be like all on yourself, and you're not going to have that team dynamic and collaboration. Like literally, this is what professors were telling me. So I
Oh yeah,
had it
I
in
believe
my head.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had in my head like, okay, maybe private practice isn't for me because I liked working on a team. I liked looking to my colleagues and saying like, hey, I'm having issues with my client. Like, what can I do?
Mhm.
You know, so but when COVID hit, like we weren't doing that anyways. Like a lot of us
Yeah.
were in our own space. So
Mhm.
if there was any discomfort or kind of like this assumption about private practice, COVID kind of like made that made me more aware of
Mhm.
what I was actually afraid of, and it was mainly that I didn't know anything how to open a business, and probably neither did my professors. So that's why like private practice just seems so foreign and kind of scary to them as well.
I'm just shaking my head because I graduated grad school in 2008, so it's been hella long.
Yeah.
And nothing has changed. We are not very business minded. We are not forging our own path type of people.
Hmm.
We're very safe, but we're very secure. We are very fearful people.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. Our job is to help people not be fearful. And yet we are a profession who has our own fears.
Yeah. Yeah. And that leads to that assumption or causing that fear to spread to somewhere else. Because again, like I think if a professor would have planted the seed, like private practice is an option, but I'm
Mhm.
going to be honest and tell you, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Like, I think if I had heard
Yeah.
that, I would have started this path or this venture a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it all goes back to who's teaching us these things. It's all about who's teaching us, who's done it, who hasn't. And for those who haven't done it, they're going to tell you don't do it. There's a
Mhm.
lot of fear. There's a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of don't do it because it's going to fail. What about try it and see?
Yeah, oh, that's kinda like that's always been my philosophy. I think it drives certain members of my family a little crazy because it's like I'm like, I know some things about it. I read up on it. I talked to people about it. I just wanna try it. I just wanna do it. On the outside, it does look impulsive, but knowing us, like, we're very, like, methodical and, already anxiety ridden, so we kinda go through the pros and cons by the time we're making the decision, but I think on the outside, it does look like, "What are you doing, Steph? Like, what do you mean you're starting a new business? What do you mean you're, um, trying to get this certain certification?" Because in my mind, it's like, it just makes sense. Why and it
Yeah.
feels right, so why wouldn't I, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I think our upbringing really has a lot to do with our path also. And so
Mhm,
when you mentioned like family members are like, what are you doing against stuff? Like,
mhm.
why do you need this? Why are you doing that? Why can't you just have a job that gives you social security,
They're so boring. Those jobs are boring. Yeah.
What was, I think we all have pivotal moments in our lives where we're like, is this it? Is this
Yeah.
it? Is this how my life is supposed to be? I'm so freaking young and I have 30, 40 more years. And is this what my life is? Like,
Mhm.
what was your moment when you're like, I don't think I can continue on this current path that I'm on?
I was having those inclinations or those thoughts for a while. It just took me a minute to actually listen to them and do something about it. So, I was hearing the messages. I was hearing, like, stuff like, "Your well-being is not the greatest. Like, this job is making you not sleep right. It's preventing you from having a work-life balance." If there is such a thing, some days there isn't a balance, but more days it was all focused on the job. You know? And I was giving so much of myself that by the time I got home, I was depleted. Like, I couldn't move from my
Mm,
couch. I needed to take naps. I needed to do so much to take care of myself, but then Monday would hit and it's like, okay, the process is starting all over again. So I can never really, you know, rest or get myself back to 100%, you know? That was happening for a while. It was. But because so many of us were in the same boat, so many of us were struggling with that, it just became my normal. Like, this must
mhm.
just be how work is, you know? And then when
The
COVID hit, it
norm.
was like, "Wait, you mean I could see less than 8 clients a day?" I could see like
Mhm.
maybe 2 or 3 and not feel like I need to, just collapse on the couch or, just not engage with anyone in my household. Oh, I like that feeling. I like that feeling where I could see my clients and not feel so tired, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And use the word languish.
Yes.
I feel
Yes.
like everyone is languishing away, and I think we all think that that's the norm to languish away at life.
Mhm. Yeah, and it makes sense, and this is why I have conversations with my clients about especially because we are women of color, because we have this
Mhm.
notion, like, we have so much to prove, but in a capitalist society, in jobs that maybe don't think we're worthy or maybe they're just not used to folks with our flavor, whatever it is, you know,
Mhm.
we interpret that as, like, imposter syndrome or maybe we're not worthy of, like, having that work-life balance, but either way, the work life that, we currently have, we're overworking ourselves.
Mhm.
It is not healthy. That is not normal. But everyone in your job or certain folks, like, they wanna convince you it is. You can
Yeah.
have both, but it's hard. It's hard because
Mhm.
we're living in a society that worships over productivity.
Mhm. You're right on. And I think with that comes, being women of color and in this field, being therapy. And we decided that, you know what? No more. No
Mhm.
more. That we can choose the life that we want, but it's going to be hard. And it's going to be hard. And which heart are you going to choose? Which heart are we going to choose?
Yeah, 'cause I would say, like, because I was so used to, like, getting tired and still, like, showing up for my client, I'm not afraid of
Yeah.
hard work. I'm not afraid of doing the hard work, but it's just taking on that education and taking on that work of, like, how what do I need self-esteem-wise, confidence-wise, support-wise to make myself, this job or this career that really does suit me better.
Hmm. Yeah. I think so many people we're functioning. We're like a machine.
Mhm.
And we're so used to just functioning and going through the process that when you get rest, and it's like, oh my God, I have rest. My health is better. I feel better. I look better.
Mhm.
And it's like, I can't go back to the former me.
Yeah. No. Well, one, like, that person was so young. She had so much energy. Like, she could dole it out a little bit more. Now it's like, now that
Right.
I'm getting closer to my 40s now, it's like, I need to slow down. I need to be able to set these boundaries because, yeah, my capacity for taking on um, that much of a workload is just it's just not possible anymore.
How many hours do you think you were working?
It wasn't as so I was at a school base. So you would think like, starting your job
Mm,
at 8, 8:30 and then ending like before 5, like
yeah.
you would think like that's normal, like that's a 9 to 5, whatever. But when
Yeah.
you take into account because it's school based, you're probably seeing a kid every period, including lunch, by the way. Like some of the school-based
Mm,
therapists don't have lunch 'cause they just
yeah.
don't wanna miss class to see a therapist. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I was seeing like 8 to 9 clients a day, and if you're, doing that, like, maybe 3, 4 days a week, again, it's not the time, it makes sense, like, 8
Mhm.
hours, 8, 9 hours, like, doesn't sound too bad, but when you take in the emotional and mental labor to sit there and
Mhm.
listen to someone's trauma narrative and go through the motions of like, "Well, this is what school is telling me, this is what's happening with folks, I don't have much freedoms because 'cause I'm a minor," it does take a lot. Like, you
It takes a
know
toll.
yeah, so it's not the time necessarily, it's just being able to be present for 8,
The
9 hours.
emotional. Yeah, the present.
That's a lot.
Y Yeah, when people are like, "Oh, yeah, you're seeing 5, 6 clients." I
Mhm.
say, imagine being in 5, 6 Zoom meetings back to back. Remember everything, being the facilitator, remember every detail, and doing the work, like 5 to 6, 7 Zoom meetings back to back.
Yeah.
And when I say that, people seem to be like, oh, okay. Now that he said that, that sounds exhausting. And think about that. Doing
Yeah.
therapy is very much like Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, but you have to be present,
Yeah.
emotionally present.
Because if you zone out, you could miss like a safety issue. You could miss a crisis call.
Yeah.
And we are liable, like, especially as interns, like we would get into so much trouble if, especially working out of school. Because the school would be like, they're trying to avoid things like liability every day. So they're definitely not going to protect you if you miss something.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, working, you know, and you're a mandated reporter too. So that's the thing, working with kids, you are a mandated reporter and you have to be even more in tune, especially working with that population.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm working with teens, man. Like they know the tricks. They know how to hide.
They do.
They know what to say. So yeah, they're very familiar with mandated laws. So by the time I get to them, they just, I have to be on point, you know, because the system has failed. I have to prove like I'm not like them, but at the same time, like I still have to follow the same rules and laws.
Yeah. So for anybody who's hearing this, it's very emotionally draining. And for anybody who's ever gone to therapy and noticed that their therapist is not emotionally present, this is what happens when you see 7, 8, 9 clients a day.
Yeah. Short term, it makes sense. Like 8, 9 clients, like doesn't sound a lot, but long term, especially because I'm a trauma expert. Like I'm listening to very intense traumatic narratives. It's long term. It just 8, 9 clients just is not the way to do it. So there needs to be like systematic change for that. But again, like this is what prompted me to be like, okay, I could continue seeing 8, 9 clients, or I could just have a choice. I liked having the choice of not having that.
Yeah. You know, speaking of choices, so I do a lot of trauma work also. So I do trauma, grief work. A lot of people come to us and they feel like they don't have choices, that they're stuck and that they can't do whatever it is that they want to do. What happened for you to say like, you know what? I do have choices. I don't have to be stuck. Like I do have choices. Like what happened or what was the moment you realized that you had choices?
I was working at a particular job site that it was the old red flags and flavorings were coming back, like the old vibes, especially in like it just felt like a very toxic work environment that I had previously did. And, you know, I worked at that place for a few years and it was just like, oh, this is happening again. It's happening again. And instead of, I had a notion of like, maybe I should just hack it for like a year because I wanted to build my private practice. I was licensed at the time, but it was during COVID. So I had this decision to make of like, if I stay, I have things like health insurance. I could build a little savings. I could, you know, play the long game a little bit. But into this new job, it was like the 3-month mark. I was looking at it and I was talking to the colleagues and I'm like, I don't think I can hack it for a year. I really don't. Like if I stay, I may leave the mental health field altogether. Like, and at that point, I spent like 7 years getting to my license. Like I'd worked hard for this. I didn't want to up and leave altogether, but for the sake of everything that I invested in myself and invested in my licensure, I just decided like, I'm just going to leave this job and create a new job. But it was a choice. It was a hard choice. It probably wasn't the choice looking back, like I probably would have found like another job just to build that savings a little bit more. But just in the timing and everything that was happening, it was like, that was the best decision I could have made at that time.
I chuckle because I think a lot of therapists, if there are any therapists who are watching this, I think we all can chuckle and laugh at how you're feeling because at one point we all thought, I need to leave the field. It's for my own sanity because of a certain employer, a certain boss. And you're thinking, can I hack this out for a year? Can I? And you're like, no, A year doesn't sound long, but
Mhm.
a year is hella long when you're miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, those are the choices. Um, Coming to the understanding, like, those were my choices, because I was trying to, like, I make plans. I do. Like, I write things out, I talk it out, I have my circle of people just to kind of bounce ideas off of.
Mhm.
Everything that made me feel less anxiety and less tired was pointing to the choice of, well, it's less security. You don't have health insurance. You have to go to, like, Cover California for that. You have to do
Mhm.
more research on, like, just to get yourself more stable. That seemed more enticing than repeating, the toxic work environment history.
Mhm.
And again, I think for a lot of our clients, like, that's hard, because this turmoil or this possible thing that makes us feel like overworked or, just out of sorts, we're used to this. So we built a
Mhm.
tolerance to it. A lot of conversations I have with clients is like, you have to make you have to understand, like, do you want to continue this?
Yeah.
And that may not, again, it's a hard choice, it's a hard decision, but it's still a choice.
Mhm.
And just clinging on to the nostalgia of, but this is what I know, I don't think it's enough anymore.
Mhm. That was that was well said. I mean, so well said. And again, we have these conversations with our clients, and what about with ourselves?
Mhm.
Especially people in the helping field. How can we help other people if we can't or won't help ourselves?
I think it's hard for us to look in the mirror because, again, we know the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we know the steps, like, we can, like,
Yeah.
recite it like
Mhm.
nothing,
Mhm.
but when we really have to apply it to ourselves, it's like, wait, like, 1, I'm in it, like, maybe
Mhm.
it's depression or anxiety or whatever, problem or situation is happening, but it's hard to admit, like, how could a therapist be in this spot,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah.
there's, like, an ego check there. And for a lot of us, it's hard to hold ourselves accountable when we're also, like, keeping track of other people's accountability, you know?
Mhm.
I'm so giving of myself, probably there is nothing left from me, you know?
Yeah.
That script, that particular, priority list has to change.
Mhm. When was the moment when you knew I have to check in with myself? I have to do this for my.
Yeah. It was really when my body was like, yelling, "You need to take care of me." So at the time, I was struggling with migraines. I was struggling with a lot of hip pain. Doctors were telling me, like, yes, you live a very sedentary lifestyle with my job. Um, and I wasn't able to, like, have time to work out or, again, just move my body the way that it needed. When that was happening, it was like, okay, first priority has to be my body. Obviously mental health is a part of that, but first, if I can't get out of bed, I can't take care of my mental needs, my emotional needs, gotta focus on the body.
Mhm.
That job too wasn't allowing me to, like, have the time or the capacity to start doing the workouts, start meeting with folks who could help me learn about, like, again, to nourish my body in a way that was healthy.
Mhm.
That had to change.
Yeah. So the doctor had to tell you this
The doctor's been telling me for a while. Again, it takes me a minute to listen.
then.
'Cause, again, like, when you're in the
We
field,
make
like,
we make terrible patients, don't we, as
we do, we
therapists?
do. But I think it's just, like, we have this notion that, like, I can take it. I can take the abuse. Like, I can take, you know, this, this situation just, like, another few months. It's okay.
Yeah. It's not that bad. I've done worse. I did grad school. I can do all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, but my body was telling me, like, "No, this from gate, this is just not possible. The expectations are too high. Go for a walk." Take
Yeah.
breaks, drink
Yeah.
water, have lunch. Lunch was always a big deal for me. Because I was so used to working at school base, didn't have lunch. So I
Yeah.
had to build that routine and teach myself, like, wait, my body is hungry. My body needs like nourishment, something. See,
Mhm.
you're drinking water, you know,
Thank
like,
you.
yeah, we need to do it, but the signals or the mind-body connection just wasn't there anymore.
I think we have pivotal moments where we're just like, I need to change. And that sound like that was your pivotal moment where you're like, I gotta make a change for myself. What if you had not made the change? What do you think would have happened?
Oh, yeah, I would have left the field. I would have left mental health. I would have probably I don't know what I would be doing, but I knew I would have been just so bitter and just so angry that, like,
Mhm.
no, I don't wanna do client work ever again.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And if you're a therapist or if you are in a field that you're feeling bitter, what words to you would you have for them? If anybody was going through that right now.
Your feelings and opinions are valid. They are so real, it's visceral. It's probably hard to admit that, like, um, you give so much of the job and it's not giving it back.
Mhm.
There's no, like, reciprocal relationship there. There is no it's gonna continue to being take, 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 you know? And we have to find other facets in our life that are able to give, 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 whether it's relationships or a better work environment or of ourselves, which is the better version of that. If
Mhm.
my job isn't giving me a chance to rebuild my energy or, make me feel safe, because that was another issue too. Um, I felt like I couldn't voice my opinions or I couldn't, implement like subtle changes because
Mhm.
the whole thing with the pandemic that I find so interesting is, like, I was talking about, like, virtual sessions for the longest time. I was talking about, like, let's use technology
Mhm.
a little bit more because we're kinda stuck in, like, the '90s. Like, we're using paper forms.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know? Like, why can't we invest in, like, an iPad so people can sign consent forms or invest in EHR, that's a little bit more streamlined,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, wasn't really the way that they wanted to hear it, has kind of been my feedback. So when it came to, like, yeah, having opinions, if you have opinions or you feel like you just have a different way of doing things, that is real too.
Mhm.
You might just be in an environment that just doesn't support you. That doesn't mean you're wrong necessarily. So listen to your gut. If you need to take better care of yourself and explore things on your own, like whether it's technology or just a better work-life balance, there are other options.
Mhm. Some people who are watching this are saying there's no such thing as work-life balance. Do you believe that?
I think the whole notion that it's 50-50 is bullshit. Like,
Mhm.
it's never gonna be like the scales are always gonna be even.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna fluctuate, so the scales are gonna be up and down. So work is gonna take over one day, but maybe the next day is more
Mhm.
life, and that's where you can rest, or vice versa. Like, there's always gonna be moments where it's like, yeah, it could be balanced, like, you could do it all. You could
Yeah.
do it all, but it's not always gonna be that way.
Mhm. So it sounds like it's a lot of give and take.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was beautifully said. And so that was the moment when you decided to forge your own path.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when you decided I'm going to forge my own path?
Whew. I just kept repeating, "It had to be done. It has to be done. I have to do this." Like, there was this moment of, like, it if it's not now, when will it ever happen?
Yeah.
You know? Um, yeah, there wasn't and granted, like, it wasn't that the work environment was the worst. Like, I think certain people, like, they find the previous nonprofit that I used to work at, like, they found, like, solace in that. Like, they learned a lot. They met, like, their colleagues that they still talk to many years later. But I think at that point, because, like, the transition from, okay, pre-COVID to post-COVID life, there wasn't like much support in that. I noticed that like, okay, a lot of nonprofits are like standing on a house of cards,
Yeah.
you know, because the systems or the way that they do business, it's just a little like old school. And if there was a conversation on, well, we want to be more innovative, we want to like, incorporate this new policy, there wasn't much conversation or, communication with us therapists or people who do the work on the daily. So they make these changes and we're like, where's this coming from? Like,
Right.
why are we doing this? This makes our job harder,
Right. I think that's a frustration with a lot of practitioners. I think that's a frustration for a lot of us who are practitioners is all these rules and all these like stipulations are being made by people who have no idea how to do patient care.
Yeah.
And they make our lives so much harder than it already is. Because it's a system issue. And it's the people who have no idea how to do our jobs that are the leaders.
Yeah, I'm finding that this is I don't know if it's like the norm in other places, but I'm finding that the higher you climb up the ranks in certain nonprofit professions, those folks don't do client work. Like they have PhDs or a background in education or some higher degree, right?
Yeah.
Yes, granted hard stuff. Like you had to do dissertation, you had to do research. Good for you. But you do not know my life. You do not know what it means to really sit down and do a safety plan or create a treatment plan that incorporates parents or, other staff members at school. Like you don't know how to navigate those conversations. And it's not that I don't trust you. I just find it interesting that you think certain policies or certain rules will make my life better when you don't even talk to me or get my input or try to live a day in my shoes. Like where's that collaboration?
I think it's like theory versus practice.
Yeah.
In theory, that sounds wonderful. In practice, it's like no.
Yeah.
No. And it's the people who are doing the theories that are in leadership roles. And it's the real life practice that are the people who are actually doing the practicing. And those two don't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I think I think it's the lack of transparency. Like if it wasn't so gatekeepy, like why aren't I having conversations with the directors or the higher ups? Why? And yeah, I might be an intern, I might be new to the field, quote unquote, but I would like to know, like, oh, like this is your job. Maybe someday I would like that role. How do I get to, where you're at?
Yeah.
I just don't see. Yeah. That's why like when venturing out into entrepreneurship, it was less of that secretive gatekeepy, like, oh no, behind closed doors, like you're not allowed in here. Everyone that I try to interact with, they're like, of course, come collaborate, come with us. Like we're a team, not a family. Family dynamic in the workplace, very toxic. If that's what they're telling you. But no, like the folks, and because I'm more interacting with women of color, especially other Latinx or Latinas, it's like just a whole new game of like, oh, you know this person? Let me connect you with this person. Y'all should like hang out. Where was that in nonprofit or grad school?
Yeah. I think, what you brought up is so important. And I think us as therapists, this is why I'm doing consulting work, is organizational leadership. And these conversations need to occur.
Yeah.
And this is why we decided to forge our own path, because these type of conversations were not happening. It was very gatekeeping. It was very secretive. There was no transparency. There was no communication. It was people who did not know how to do our job that were telling us how to do our job. And it was a lot of systems that didn't work for us. And it's like, you know what? We have to look out for ourselves. And the best way to look at ourselves is to leave the system.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, there's some days I miss working in a nonprofit. It is, I would be interacting with clients that probably wouldn't afford my services, probably couldn't, be able to come to me because I'm not at the school, But that's why I try my best to incorporate, you know, prices or insurance-based pay, or I try to make it as equitable as possible, you know? And we're figuring it out because unfortunately in a capitalist society, there's no like straight model and like, this is what makes it fair. This is how everyone wins a little bit, you know? And those are still conversations in the mental health field. We're still trying to figure out within ourselves, like, because it's a service-based industry, we have to, we kind of feel forced or kind of like guilted into like, well, you have to make it as little or free as possible, you know? But again, and you and I talked about in the podcast we did together, it's like, why can't we do both? Why can't we provide the service, but also have a livable wage?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, again, I think our field has so much growing to do, and to take care of other people, we have to take care of ourselves, and that means, you know, maybe, yeah, we have to make a living also. We have to make a living also, and there's a lot of guilt. Like, I'm not trying to shame the church or anything here, and if you're religious, I apologize too, but I feel like our field is very much at the church where we're guilted into giving, and we're shamed and all of that to make us feel that we shouldn't have more. And it's like, but what's wrong if I want more for myself? What if it means I can take care of myself and other people?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's coming up right now is, so I don't know if like I announced this to you yet, but I got certified to do ADHD assessment. So I hold a master's. I'm an MFT, but I'm able to do ADHD assessments. So I'm introducing something called anti-racist, anti-oppressive price points. You know, if those who probably have less privilege or, you know, do not have that generational wealth, they pay a little bit less, you know, or significantly less than, you know, those who are able to afford my full fee. You know, the pushback I'm getting is like, okay, are you still like, are you getting paid enough for your worth? Are you sure you want to sacrifice, you know, for folks who maybe can't afford your full fee? So why make it more accessible to them? But also, why are you punishing those who make more money? And it's like, okay, then I probably shouldn't be working with that if they see it as a punishment. Because hopefully my clients understand that, oh, I make, and granted, like the privilege, like you have to like one, like I'm not quite sure why you're trying to see me, because most likely if you can afford that price point, you can go see a PhD. You know, there's that. But it's cool if you really want to work with me and you are able to afford like the full fee and maybe a little bit more, so that goes to someone else. I kind of want that, you know, that dynamic, because you're probably more my ideal client. You understand on some level the system, whether it's insurance or medical hospitals or, you know, capitalism in general, they don't look out for us. So we have to turn to our people for that for now. Hopefully it's not going to be a forever thing, but this is the best system we have to take care of one another.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds to me that you are doing a lot of amazing things.
Yeah. And it started with just random conversations with money. It did, you know?
Yeah. Tell me more about that. So your Awkward Money.
Yes.
Where did you get that name, Awkward Money?
So anytime, it's same thing with TODOS Therapy. I have like a long list of names that I'm like, what works, what doesn't. So, and it was a back and forth. Again, I go to my circles, I kind of listen to my intuition on what sounds right. With Awkward Money, I was like, everyone knows this, like I'm like one of the more awkward therapists out there, but I own it, you know, it's just
I love it. Own it. Yeah, own it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's part of the marketing, you know, content creation stuff. So anytime I talked about my situation with money or tried to like reframe money situations with my clients, it was like, oh yeah, this is just really awkward. Like, this is so awkward. Like, you don't have financial literacy. You don't know who to turn to if you're having money trouble. Like, you don't really have people to like just talk about these very sensitive topics. It's awkward. And it just kept repeating, awkward, awkward, awkward.
I feel like money and sex are probably the most awkward topics to talk about.
Yeah. So from there, it was like, oh, this is awkward money. Like, this is awkward money situations. And from there, it was like people assume like I'm there to make it less awkward. It's like, no, I'm here to help you embrace it. It's okay to be a little awkward. It's okay to admit that you don't know what you're doing, or really that there's a lot of feeling that's overwhelming. Let that sink in. Because again, from trauma-based work, like those feelings or those situations are signals, they're messages. You know, we have to take that moment to sit with it and really figure out like what is happening in my environment that is triggering this message. What is it trying to tell me?
Yeah. You know, I think when we think of trauma, we never think about money. And, you know, I think both of us coming from background. So I'm Hmong and you are
I'm half Nicaraguense, so half Nicoya, then half Salvadorian or Salvi. Yeah.
Okay. And so I think especially as children of immigrants, like even if you're second, third generation, we have a lot of money trauma. And what would you say that you see a lot of like trauma and finances related to?
Ooh, so at least for my family's neck of the woods, which is like more Nicaragua. I grew up on my mother's side, and who are originally from Nicaragua. Their situation was they were a family with generational wealth. Like I guess my grandfather he was a businessman. Like all of his children went to college. Like there was he would go to certain villages and people knew his family, you know. But when they came to America, unfortunately, because of the Civil War that happened in the 80s, they lost everything. They basically had to start over, and it didn't really matter. They were college educated. They were just America kind of viewed them, and they were like, "You guys don't look like us. You guys don't speak English." So my mom was working at a factory that dealt with cardboard, you know. So yeah, there was like a chip on their shoulder for many years. So when it came to things like money, unfortunately, there was like this impulse of I need to spend to make myself feel happy. You know, I need to spend to like get to this, to recapture what I used to have, you know. So when it came to me, you know, I'm first generation technically, but I'm more aligned with second or third generation Latinx folks in California. My situation was more, okay, we have money, now we don't. Interesting. Oh, now we don't have money, but you're playing like we do. Interesting. Okay, so money is like a facade. Like it helps build, it's a form of masking. Got it. That's not cool. Like that's not healthy. I know that's not healthy. So how do I kind of sit with the idea of like those moments I don't have money? How honest can I be with certain family members? Because again, we don't talk about money. We just don't. So that dynamic is very much like the thing. What I'm seeing in my clients is I don't trust financial institutions because again, if they're coming from a civil war, the government was looking out for them. They had to run and flee. They were refugees, so they had to have cash on hand. So the idea of investing or locking things in a savings account, not the business. So there's all this mistrust and lack of confidence in an organized financial institution. You know? And I'm having conversations on, I get it, but or more, it's and you can have that mistrust and you're missing out on financial opportunities. So how do we balance out this a little bit more? How do we make this more of a win-win?
Yeah, that's so interesting. You know, how we're talking today, right now, is what people are talking about their grandparents during the Depression. And these are our parents and grandparents. Like, these are our parents that are having these thoughts. Not from like the 1930s and 40s. It's like 2024 that they're having these thoughts.
Yeah. No, the joke, so there's a show called Primo It's like on Amazon Prime. It was on their free channel, but they're trying to get rid of it. So Primo, there's this. It's the show is about this one kid, and he has like 5 uncles and his mom. You know,
Yeah.
but the mom has 5 brothers, so you can imagine having 5 Latino uncles look out for you. It's very interesting. There is one uncle that I like, and I just love him. I wish like the show wasn't canceled, but he has this banking system where he puts his cash in different winter coats.
Oh.
And that is like a joke in the Latinx community. There's an uncle who most likely keeps his cash and he has it in the jackets. Because again, if you have to run, you can put on your jacket. Every family member has a jacket and they have the cash, you know? So it's like, okay, that makes sense. But how do we put some of the jacket money in a bank and you still have access and you feel comfortable that it's going to be there no matter what?
Talk about trauma.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're always going to be on the run and grabbing which jacket so that you can run.
Yeah. So again, and utilizing our trauma work, especially with anxiety and, you know, what could happen. We talk of the narrative, like what else is driving this? The jackets feel safe. Why do the jackets feel safe? You know, those are the conversations I love having with my clients.
Yeah. And so that's awkward money. And, you know, so I do a lot of trauma work too. And when you are a BIPOC clinician, you tend to get a lot of BIPOC clients from all different types of cultures. And one of the things, I don't know if you had this conversation with your clients, but a lot of my clients are international workers who work for these big corporations, especially here in Minnesota. And one of the things that they struggle with is sending money back home.
Yes, that is not.
Yeah, and you know, and coming from a refugee background to being Hmong, is sometimes when you are the first person to get the job, the corporate job, to have the education, or if you come from a background, this is for anybody who is the first one in the family to graduate college and get a nice job, somehow you're like the lottery kid who everybody goes to for money, for help, and having the burden of being less successful. And do you have a lot of clients who come to you for that?
Yeah, this is where like we need to unpack the family rules, because my family hasn't done it in a while, but we used to send clothes money. Like we would have the suitcases full of stuff for folks like in Nicaragua. I think as we got older, we realized like recession wise, like, it just wasn't viable. We just couldn't do it. But for a lot of my family members who are actively like, no, we need to send money back to the family members. Like that's what they would do for us. You know, I'm not saying like that's wrong or like we have to stop that, but maybe we just need to set some better boundaries. Like, do we need to give as much as we have in the past, especially if like, again, for a lot of my clients right now, like they're getting laid off from these tech companies, you know? Is there a conversation that could be had about like, hey, I know I gave you this much like last year. Can we talk about like a payment plan? Can we talk about like just giving less? Like, is it utmost importance that we need this right now? You know, and those are hard conversations for a lot of my family members because and my clients, because it's like, you know, again, we don't talk about money.
No,
we just don't. So can we at least confide in other family members that feel safe to have these conversations, and maybe we go at it as a united front? You know,
we don't talk about money and we don't have boundaries.
Yeah. Why don't we have boundaries? That's the key thing. Like who started that? And is it working? Is it serving us?
Yeah.
You know? And not just you individually, but the whole family. Because guess what? Like, I don't know a lot of folks who have that disposable income anymore.
No.
You know? So why are we trying to play like we are? Like, yes, we're in America, but living in America is very expensive.
It's hella expensive. And you know, I think I work with, you know, a lot of BIPOC clients, and when I speak about boundaries, especially financial boundaries, they're like, we don't have boundaries. And I'm like, Oh no, boundaries is for everybody. It's not just for white people, okay? Boundaries is for everybody, and those are expectations and standards that you set for yourself. And especially financial boundaries, we have to have financial boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so right now you are a financial trauma coach. You do ADHD assessments, and you have your private practice.
Yes.
Okay. What are you not doing? You know, I'm kidding. What else do you
over
do?
The world. Sorry.
Yeah. See
that. For all my Pinky in the Brain fans. Yeah. I'm not taking over the world. Yeah.
In case nobody knows that's a TV show from the 90s, or anybody who's young who was like, what is Stephanie talking about? It's a show. What show was it called?
Pinky in the Brain.
Pinky in the Brain. Yeah, with that little, he was a mouse, right? Or right. Okay. So yeah, so tell us, like, taking over the world. What does it look like for you to take over the world?
So right now, as much as I love one-on-one therapy, I love seeing my individual clients, I am moving more into ADHD assessments. I'm moving more into my financial coaching, where I offer a session called like the Money Safety Plan, if you just want to meet with me once and just want to start your financial goals, to like a 6-month program, you know. And with that, I'm not stuck with my California license. Like I can see folks, and because I'm used to seeing folks online, I can see folks from anywhere around the country. And right now I'm just kind of taking it day by day, you know. I'm just kind of seeing every day. It's like, do I want to get another certification like EMDR? Do I want to do brain spotting? I'm trying to stop that impulsive. Because right now, like, it's just, I just want to do my ADHD assessments, and my clients are getting a lot of questions answered in that process. So same thing with Awkward Money.
Question for you. So I know that a lot of people are wondering if they have like ADHD. Do you only work with clients in California to do those assessments, or is that for anybody?
No, it's strictly for California, because that's where my license is. Every once in a while, I'm like, should I just get a license in like Minnesota? And I know, like,
a lot of people. A lot of people, and that's why I asked that question, because I know that a lot of people are looking to have an assessment, to just really wonder. It's like, is there something that would help me explain a lot of things? And so, if you're not just in California, I know that a lot of people would love to come to you and have this assessment completed.
I've been thinking about it. I don't know. It's just the idea of filling. I'm not good with paperwork. I am. Once I do it, I'm really good at it. But starting it, this is why, like, I get along with my ADHD clients, because that whole like procrastination and just why it takes so long. Like, I get that. I'm in that. And if I'm able to like start the process by doing this ADHD assessment with you, you can too, you know? But crossing the state lines. And this is why the system, I wish it was better, because PhDs, they have their compact contracts or whatever. I wish MFTs or master's level clinicians, like, we had that too. Like, we were able to cross state lines and not have to pay, the fee or take another exam or do this so boring application process.
And it's expensive too, by the way.
It's so expensive.
Depending on what state that you want to be licensed in. I know California is very expensive. Yeah. So it sounds to me like you are doing so many badass, amazing things. And this podcast is called Owning It. And we talked about how you forged your own path, what happened for you to forge your own path, and what does it mean to own it for you?
Ooh, what it means to own it. One, being honest with yourself. I think a lot of us, we assume like being honest is like, like I'm aware, I can call people out on their bullshit. That's part of it. As you can tell, like I'm really good at it. But what I'm not good at is sometimes, like, if I'm getting signals or messages, especially from my feelings or, from like previous experiences, it's hard for me to admit like, wait, I need to sit with that. I need to be able to like process that and not just rush to the solution. I need to decipher the messages and see what is really happening here. So yeah, being honest. And it's okay if your decision leads to mistakes, but don't let that stop you. Don't let that fear be the thing that's stopping, like making you feel stuck.
Mm-hmm. That was beautiful. And how are you helping other people own it?
I like to think that the metaphor I give when anyone meets me, like for any of my services or offerings, is I'm part teacher, but I'm also part guide. So the metaphor I give is when I meet you, you are Dante and you're about to start your journey into the Inferno. For my classics major, Dante's Inferno.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, at some point, Dante is like in the woods. He's by himself, and then he meets Virgil, and Virgil is there to help him go through the rings of hell. But at a certain point, Virgil cannot go with him to from like the purgatory to heaven. Like Virgil is just not allowed in those circles. Dante is. At a certain point, I have to leave you, quote unquote, but hopefully it's at a place where we can agree on that. That is my role. But along the way, I do have to tell you, like, you cannot stay in this ring of hell. You cannot stay put in this particular section. And eventually I cannot guide you anymore. And yes, it is scary. It is frustrating. You can totally say like, fuck off. Like where that is, but me as your Virgil, like this is the way it has to be.
When you said that, I thought of Lord of the Rings at the end, where Sam is telling Frodo, throw in the ring.
Yes.
I carried your ass up here. I did everything, but ultimately, you got to throw the ring, Frodo. You got to throw it. I can't do it anymore. I carried your ass and everything. So, yeah, I feel like that's owning it. Like, Frodo has to own it, that this was, everything started and it ends with him.
Yeah. And along the way, like you're learning different facets of yourself. You're learning how to tolerate the discomfort and the trauma and really be honest with, this is what happened, but it doesn't have to be that way anymore. So that's really what it means to own it at the end of the day. You look at the choices you have and you say, like, I just want to make different decisions this time.
Yeah. Beautifully said. So you're definitely owning it. You're helping other people own it. What do you feel that people should know about you?
Again, awkward. I make mistakes too. But if I can be just this model of like, even though I make mistakes and I'm awkward and it is, and I'm still able to like get up in the morning, hopefully that can be like a motivator of like, you can do it too. Because I don't know if people know this, therapists are humans too. Like we don't have the same struggle, but we do have struggle, and we're still here, and we want to show up.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can show up too.
Yeah. Beautiful said. Any final words that you want to share or let our viewers know?
Just, it's okay if you don't have like I keep going back to this idea, like I like to plan things out. If you don't have a plan, but you feel in your gut like this is the right move, whatever it is, so be it. So be it. But hopefully involve people. Ask for help, talk it out with someone that you trust. Don't do any type of big decisions on your own. We especially, in our societies and in our cultures, we work as a collective and we thrived in that. you
Yeah.
know, but capitalism will have you say, like, you're supposed to do it all by yourself, you know, be the self-made man. No, that is not true. You know, name a billionaire, they most likely had help. They most likely had someone looking out for them. They had a Virgil.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And hopefully one day I'll have a billionaire on the show too. So
Yeah.
to just talk about this, or maybe one day you and I will be the billionaires. So so don't do it alone, people. Don't do it alone. I mean, it feels like you're alone, and don't do it alone. And you know, even if they're not with you on the journey, the emotional part, the support.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your story, sharing how you forge your own path, how you're owning it, and how you're helping other people forge your own path, and how you're helping people freaking own it too. So, thank you so much. And if you want to work with Stephanie, in the description below is her contact information, her website. If you want to do the coaching, if you're in California and you need a therapist, all the information is in the description below. So, Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for being here today and being my first guest. This did not feel like work to me. So I feel like this was just two friends who were having a conversation almost in a therapeutic way.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful. And I want to thank you so much. And yeah, so I'll link the description below with all your contact information, your social media, and please reach out to Stephanie if you want to work with her, and please hit the like button and subscribe button. So everybody, thank you so much, and I will see you next time on our next episode. So take care.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.